Last summer, I set out on a solitary trek across the Midwest, driving from the rolling hills of Wisconsin to the rugged expanse of Montana. It was a journey I'd been itching to take for months, a chance to clear my head and test my endurance. Behind the wheel, the route stretched over 1,000 miles, and most of it cut through desolate territory. Beyond the bustling first hour and the winding final stretch, the world dissolved into a monotonous blur of dense forests, windswept plains. And as I ventured farther west, the faint silhouettes of stubby mountains against the horizon. To keep costs down and avoid losing a day, I'd mapped out a marathon drive, leaving in the evening and powering through the night into the next afternoon, rather than splitting it into 2 sensible legs, with a hotel stop in between. It'd be brutal, no question, but I convinced myself the trade-off was worth it for the time saved and the solitude gained. I rolled out at 7:00 p.m., the sky still clinging to the last threads of daylight. Before pulling away, I ran through my checklist with near-obsessive care. Duffel bag and cooler secured in the trunk, a small arsenal of snacks, pretzels, granola bars, a couple of apples piled on the passenger seat alongside a thermos of coffee and a few cans of energy drink. The car hummed to life, and I eased onto the road. The first hour was familiar territory, city streets alive with headlights, then the sleepy outskirts dotted with small towns, their neon signs flickering goodbyes as I pressed on. Soon, though, the world emptied out. The highway unfurled in two. A ribbon of asphalt cutting through the wild, flanked by towering pines and endless fields. Traffic dwindled to nothing, just me, the hum of the engine, and the occasional glare of a passing semi. Fuel stations became rare beacons, cropping up every 20 miles or so, their lonely lights the only signs of civilization in the dark. 2 hours in, the dashboard glowed with a reassuring 2/3 tank. But as the gaps between stations stretched longer and the landscape grew wilder, a nagging instinct told me to top off before plunging into the true backcountry. I scanned the road for a sign, any sign of a stop. After 20 minutes of squinting into the night, I spotted a faint glow ahead. It was a pitiful excuse for a gas station. 4 rusty pumps hunched under a sagging canopy, a shuttered convenience store with grimy windows and not a soul in sight. I swung in, gravel crunching under the tires, and parked beside a pump. Stepping out, I was hit with the sharp chill of the night air and the faint tang of gasoline. I swiped my card and started filling up, but the pump was agonizingly slow. Each gallon trickled out like molasses, a minute ticking by for every notch on the meter. I slumped against the car, arms crossed, staring into the void beyond the lot, resigned to the delay. That's when I noticed the headlights, a faint pinprick growing larger on the horizon. A car crawled along the road, moving at a snail's pace, maybe 25 or 30 miles per hour, despite the 55 mph limit. It drifted past the station, then hesitated, brake lights flaring red. To my surprise, it reversed, swinging clumsily into the lot and parking at the pump directly behind me. My pulse ticked up a notch. Backing up on a pitch-black single-lane road at night was reckless, and the odd maneuver set my nerves on edge. Still, I reasoned they just missed the turn and were low on fuel, desperate like me. I kept my focus. Forward, listening as a door clicked open and boots scuffed the ground. A figure moved to the side of the car, but then nothing. No clank of a nozzle, no hiss of gas. Just silence stretching to long, unable to resist. I flicked my eyes toward them. He was tall, lean, dressed in a gray plaid shirt and faded black jeans, his posture rigid. And he was staring at me unblinking, like he'd been watching the whole time. Our eyes locked for a split second before I forced an awkward smile and a quick nod, then turned back to my pump, pretending to check the numbers. My skin prickled under the weight of his gaze, real or imagined. After an eternity, maybe 10 seconds, I heard the scrape of metal as he finally lifted his pump and slotted it into his tank. Relief washed over me. I'd been overreacting, spinning. A ghost story out of a tired traveler's blank stare. My tank wasn't even half full, but I'd had enough of the creeping pace. I yanked the nozzle free, twisted the cap shut, and slid back into the driver's seat. As I did, I caught one last glimpse those dull, heavy eyes tracking me again, sunken like he was running on fumes and caffeine fumes alone. Weird, I thought, but I shook it off, chalking it up to road trip paranoia. I merged back onto the highway, the station shrinking in my rearview mirror. The next 3 hours blurred into a hypnotic grind darkness, asphalt, the occasional deer darting across the road. Then the rain started, a soft patter at first, building into a relentless drumming that streaked the windshield. I'd been driving. For 5 hours now, the clock ticking past midnight, and the storm sharpened my senses, but wore me down. The wipers thumped a steady rhythm, and every mile demanded more focus than the last. I cracked an energy drink, the fizz sharp against my dry throat, and munched on pretzels, but the boost was fleeting. By 1:00 a.m., exhaustion clawed at me, and the gas gauge was dipping low again. I pressed on, peering through the deluge until a faint outline emerged, a weathered gas station, as forlorn as the last. Its flickering lights promised refuge. I pulled in, filled the tank with quick mechanical motions, then nosed the car into a parking spot beside the squat building. The lot was empty, the store dark, the pumps standing like sentinels in the rain. I slumped in the seat, fishing out my phone. The weather app warned of hours more rain, and a map search confirmed what I'd feared. No towns, no rest stops, just a void of nothingness stretching in every direction. I was marooned in the heart of nowhere. My eyelids sagged, and the rational part of me screamed for a break. A 30-minute nap. I decided just enough to recharge. Maybe let the storm ease. I reclined the seat, the patter of rain lulling me into a shallow, restless sleep. I jolted awake to the same drumming on the roof, the air thick with damp. My phone read 25 minutes since I'd closed my eyes, no alarm yet. Groggy, I sat up, rubbing my neck, and glanced through the windshield. The station was still a ghost town, but something caught my eye, a car idling at one of the pumps. I leaned forward, squinting through the rain-smeared glass. Same color, same shape as the one from before. My stomach tightened. It couldn't be not out here hours later. A fluke maybe, but the coincidence gnawed at me. Odder still, there was no sign of the driver, no silhouette in the front seat, no figure braving the downpour. I scanned the lot, the pumps, the shadows beyond. Nothing. Where could he be? The station was a barren slab, no bathrooms, no overhangs, nowhere to hide. Dread coiled in my chest, cold and heavy. I fumbled with the keys, the engine rumbling to life. I shifted into reverse, ready to bolt, but instinct made me check the mirror. My breath snagged in my throat. He was there in my back seat. Those lifeless eyes gleamed through the dark, piercing into me. A scream caught in my lungs as I threw the door open and lunged out, hitting the pavement hard. The car, still in gear, rolled backward, tires crunching wet gravel. I scrambled to my feet and sprinted for the tree line, rain stinging my face, my heart hammering. From the woods, I watched, breathless, as my car drifted aimlessly, then lurched to a halt. A shadow moved inside him, sliding into the driver's seat. Tires squealed as he gunned it, vanishing into the night with my car, leaving me stranded. I stood there, soaked and shivering, rain plastering my hair to my face. The reality sank in like a stone. My phone, my wallet, everything was still in there on the dash. But his car sat untouched at the pump, a mute witness. Wary, I crept toward it, the storm masking my footsteps. The driver's door hung ajar, keys glinting in the ignition. The back seat held a jumble of grocery bags, canned soup, a loaf of bread, a half-empty water bottle. On the passenger floor, a phone glowed faintly. I snatched it up. It was locked, but the emergency call option blinked on the screen. I dialed 911, my voice trembling as I recounted the night to the dispatcher, my eyes darting to the road. Help arrived, an hour of pacing in the rain later, and with it, a grim unraveling. The car wasn't his. It was stolen, just like mine had been. The groceries, the phone, relics of another victim, someone he'd preyed on before me. That person hadn't walked away unharmed, the cops later told me. They pieced it together. He'd slipped into my car while I slept, biding his time. He hadn't let me start driving away out of carelessness. He'd been waiting, likely planning to strike once we were miles from anywhere, alone on the road. What he wanted: ransom. Violence, something worse no one could say. He melted into the night with my car, and despite the search, neither he nor it ever turned up, standing there, clutching a stranger's phone. As the rain finally slowed, I replayed the night, the slow pump, the heavy stare, the shadow in my mirror. I'd escaped, but the weight of what might have been lingered, a ghost riding shotgun in my memory. It was mid-January last year, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones and lingers. I live in a modest house tucked into a quiet, wooded hamlet about 45 minutes from the nearest city, a place where the trees outnumber the people, and long, winding driveways keep the world at bay. That day, I'd clocked out of work early, a rare half shift that left me with a free evening to unwind. By 7:00 p.m., I was sprawled on the couch, debating whether to heat up leftovers or crack open a book, when my phone buzzed. It was an old buddy, voice tight with frustration, explaining his car had crapped out again. He needed a lift home from his job and floated the idea of grabbing a bite on the way. It wasn't the first time I'd played roadside rescuer for him, so I didn't hesitate, told him I'd be there soon. Already reaching for my coat, I shrugged into my heavy jacket, the one hanging by the front door, and scooped my keys from the hall table. The house was still, the only sound the faint hum of the heater kicking on. I twisted the knob and swung the door open, ready to step into the crisp night, and froze. A man loomed on my porch, inches from the threshold, close enough that I could have bumped into him if I'd taken one more step. My heart lurched, a jolt of adrenaline spiking through me. He was bundled in a thick coat, a black gaiter scarf, pulled up over his chin, leaving only his eyes visible, dark and unreadable. He didn't flinch, didn't even shift his weight, just stood there like a statue while I reeled from the shock. For a split second, embarrassment flooded in, jumping like a kid spooked by a shadow. Then curiosity took over, edged with unease. Who was this guy, and why was he here? Before I could get a word out, he muttered an apology, voice muffled through the scarf, saying he'd been about to knock. I brushed it off, forcing a casual tone, and asked what he wanted. He paused, then asked if I was Daniel or Darren, some name that wasn't mine, the specifics blurring in my memory. I shook my head, said no, and he gave a curt okay, turning to shuffle off the porch. I stepped outside, pulling the door shut and locking it, my eyes tracking him as he trudged down the gravel drive toward the road. Only when he'd vanished into the gloom did I climb into my car, the encounter replaying in my head as I started the engine. The drive to my friend's workplace was a half hour of winding back roads, and that stranger dominated my thoughts the whole way. My neighborhood wasn't the kind of place where people just showed up secluded, hemmed in by woods, the houses spaced far apart. Random visitors didn't wander up long driveways unless they were lost, or so I told myself. Maybe he'd been looking for someone else, a simple mix-up. It made sense, but the unease wouldn't shake loose. I picked up my friend, his chatter about his junker of a car a welcome distraction. We swung by a Culver's wolfed-down burgers and fries under the harsh fluorescent lights. Then I dropped him off at his place. It was pushing 9 p.m. by then. A light snow had started falling, dusting the ground in delicate flakes. The night otherwise calm, no wind, just a soft, wintry hush. Back home, I nosed the car into the driveway, the headlights carving twin beams through the dark. The snow crunched under my boots as I trudged to the porch, unlocked the door, and stepped inside, shaking off the chill. I kicked off my shoes, sank into the couch, and flicked on the TV, letting the drone of some late night rerun fill the quiet. With no work the next day, time slipped away unnoticed, maybe 2 hours, maybe more, lost in the glow of the screen. Eventually, my eyelids grew heavy. I stood, stretched, and switched off the set, aiming for the stairs to the bedroom. But as I passed the front door, a flicker of memory stopped me cold, that guy from earlier. I'd shoved the incident to the back of my mind, but now it clawed its way forward, sharp and insistent. Frowning, I leaned toward the peephole, peering out to settle my nerves. The porch was empty, the night still serene, snowflakes drifting lazily, the world beyond my windows undisturbed. I was about to turn away when something caught my eye. A faint disturbance in the thin layer of snow across the driveway. I squinted, but the glass warped the view. Against my better judgment, I cracked the door open, the cold biting at my face as I leaned out. There they were, boot prints, fresh and deliberate, trailing from the road up the drive, past my car, then veering off into the yard where the trees swallowed them from sight. My stomach dropped. The tracks were too purposeful, too recent to be random. If this was the same guy, back again, something was deeply wrong. I yanked the door shut, locked it, and pressed my back against it, my pulse racing. The earlier encounter flashed through my mind, his stillness, the way he'd lingered before speaking. It hadn't felt right then, and it felt worse now. I darted to the living room window, peering out, then to the kitchen, checking the side. Yard. Nothing moved, but the silence pressed in, thick and suffocating. My fingers hovered over my phone, debating, until the weight of it all tipped me into action. I dialed 911, pacing by the front window as I stammered out the story, the man on the porch, the footprints, the creeping dread. The operator's voice was calm, steadying, but mid-sentence I froze. A faint noise, soft, rhythmic, tickled the edge of my hearing. I stopped talking, straining to catch it, but it vanished. When I spoke again, it returned, elusive, like a whisper I couldn't pin down. I must have sounded unhinged, trailing off mid-sentence, but the operator stayed patient. Then it came, a violent thud against the back of the house. I nearly dropped the phone, my knees buckling as the sound reverberated through the walls. I stumbled into the hallway, heart hammering, just as another blow landed, louder, sharper. Through the glass panel of the back door, a shadow shifted someone. Out there, obscured by the glare of indoor lights against the dark. Another crash rattled the frame, heavy and deliberate, like they were swinging something solid, a bat, a crowbar, anything meant to break through. The operator's voice cut through my panic. Hide or run. My mind raced, barricade myself upstairs. Or chance the car? I snatched my keys from the table, adrenaline overriding the terror of the open night. The man was at the back, but what if there were others? What if someone waited by the driveway? I shoved the fear down, bolted out the front, and sprinted to the car, half expecting a figure to lunge from the shadows. The lot was empty. I dove in, gunned the engine, and peeled out, tires spinning on the snow-dusted gravel. I didn't stop until I hit a gas station a few miles away, hands shaking as I called the cops again from the parking lot. When they arrived, at my place, the back door hung off its hinges, splintered and gaping. Wet, smeared footprints tracked through the kitchen and living room, melted snow pooling on the hardwood, but the house was empty. Whoever it was had fled. I gave them what I could. A vague sketch of the porch guy, tall, heavy coat, scarf over his face. No proof it was the same person. No clear tie to the break-in. They took notes, promised to patrol, but the trail went cold. No arrest, no answers. Days later, I pieced it together, replaying every moment. That first encounter, had he been casing the place, testing me? If I hadn't run into him on my way out, I wouldn't have thought twice about those prints. I'd have gone to bed oblivious, maybe never heard him until it was too late. The cops figured he'd been loud because he thought the house was empty. My leaving and returning had thrown him off. But that's cold comfort. What haunts me isn't the noise or the damage, it's how ordinary the day had been. A half shift, a favor for a friend, a quiet night in. Nothing to signal the shift. No warning it could unravel like that. He's still out there, a shadow uncaught, and sometimes staring out my patched-up windows into the snowy dark. I wonder if he'll come back. Some nights, it feels like I'm just marking time until he does. It was the fall of 2019, my second year of college, and I was juggling a part-time gig babysitting to chip away at my car payments. 3 or 4 nights a week, I'd trek across town to watch kids while their parents slipped out for a few hours. For the past month, I'd had a regular stint with a quiet couple and their 3-year-old son, a gig that was easy enough to fit into my chaotic student life. The parents were reserved but warm, always greeting me with soft smiles before heading out. They'd leave right around the kid's bedtime, so my job was simple: keep an eye on him, make sure he stayed asleep, and hold down the fort until they got back, usually 4 or 5 hours later. They never said much about where they went, something about heading into the city, maybe a standing date night or a late shift obligation. I didn't pry. It wasn't my business. That night, I pulled into their driveway at 8:00 p.m., tires crunching on the gravel. The house sat at the edge of a sleepy suburban street, flanked by overgrown shrubs and a scattering of pines. The parents met me at the door, coats already on, and murmured that the boy was tucked in upstairs, out cold. They thanked me with their usual understated gratitude, then slipped out into the dusk. I dropped my backpack by the couch, did my routine lap through the house, kitchen, hallway, a peek up the stairs, then settled into an armchair in the living room. They'd always told me to make myself at home, raid the fridge, or flip on the TV, but I rarely bothered. Most nights, I just scrolled through my phone, the glow of the screen a lifeline to the outside world, breaking the stillness with muted videos or endless text threads. Every so often, I'd pad past the kid's room to check on him. His tiny snores a faint reassurance in the quiet. Barely 45 minutes in, my phone buzzed with a mom's name flashing across the screen. I answered, puzzled, and her voice came through, tinged with confusion. She asked if I just called her. I frowned. No, I hadn't. I was still here. Everything was fine. No reason to reach out. She explained she'd gotten a call from an unknown number, silence on the other end when she picked up. She'd wondered if I'd switched phones or if the call had glitched. I reassured her everything was under control, the kids still sleeping, the house undisturbed. She paused, then said, "All right," and hung up. I brushed it off as a worried. Parents overthinking, maybe a wrong number had set her on edge. I did another quick sweep to the stairs, peering into the boy's room where he lay sprawled under a blanket, then sank back into the chair, phone in hand. 20 minutes later, I was deep into some mindless video when a flicker of light cut through the room. Headlights bled through the slats of the blinds, casting thin, shifting stripes across the carpet. I figured it was a neighbor pulling in next door, a routine disruption in the cul-de-sac's rhythm. But the glow lingered, steady and unyielding. Long after it should have dimmed, curiosity tugged at me. I set my phone down, edged to the window, and parted the blinds with a finger. A beat-up gray sedan idled at the curb, right in front of the house, rust-streaked, ancient, its tinted windows swallowing any hint of the interior. I stared, fixated on the car's stillness, until movement snapped me out of it. A figure stood. Near the driveway's end, just off the sidewalk, a man, hands in his pockets, head tilted up toward the house. My stomach tightened. He wasn't moving, just watching, his silhouette stark against the streetlight's faint halo. I let the blinds snap shut, heart ticking faster. Confronting him wasn't an option. This wasn't my place, and I wasn't about to play hero over a stranger's lawn. I stayed by the window, peering through the gap. After a long minute, he ambled back to the sedan, climbed in and pulled away, but agonizingly slow, like he was still scanning the house as he went. I tracked the headlights as they slid down the street, weaving through the trees until they halted a block away, the beams winking out between the trunks. Had he parked? Stepped out? I strained to see, but the distance and shadows hid any answers. Maybe he was lost, hunting for a house number in the dark, or visiting someone nearby and got turned around. It was weird, no question, but I talked myself down. Probably nothing. I lingered by the window another 5 minutes, eyes darting for any sign of him, doubling back. Nothing. Shrugging it off as a fluke, I returned to the armchair, unease simmering, but not enough to text the parents. What would I even say? A car stopped by, and I'm jittery? It felt like overreacting. To shake the lingering tension, I flicked on the TV, keeping the volume a murmur so it wouldn't drift upstairs. I cracked the blinds wider, letting the streetlight spill in, a small comfort against the creeping dark. Time blurred after that, an hour, maybe two, lost to sitcom reruns and the dull hum of the house settling. My eyelids sagged, the weight of a long day pulling me under. I wasn't fully out, just drifting in that hazy half-sleep where the world softens, but doesn't fade. A faint thump brushed the edge of my awareness, too vague to jolt me. Then it came again, sharper, pulling my eyes open. I sat up, groggy, ears straining. Another thud, low, deliberate, echoed from somewhere in the house. I stumbled to my feet, shaking off the fog, and headed for the stairs to check the kid. But as I crossed the hallway, a flash of movement snagged my peripheral vision. I whipped my head toward the back door. There he was outside, yanking at the handle, his face pressed close to the glass, eyes locked on mine. My breath hitched. The second he saw me staring, he tugged harder, the door rattling in its frame like he meant to tear it loose. Panic surged through me, electric and wild. I bolted upstairs, bursting into the boy's room. He stirred as I scooped him up, his sleepy whimpers cutting through my pounding pulse. I clutched him tight, whispering reassurances I barely believed, while the thumps below grew louder, harsher, like he'd traded his hands for something heavier. A bat, a shoulder, something to smash through. I raced back down, the kid clinging to me, just as a splintering crack split the air, plastic and metal giving way. I darted for the hallway, glancing back. The back door gapped open, and he was. Inside, dark hair, casual jacket, a glint of steel in his hand. A knife. He didn't pause, charging straight for us. I lunged for the front door, fumbling it open, and sprinted into the night. The cold bit at my face as I shoved the kid into the car, slamming the locks just as the man reached the driver's window, his shadow looming. I floored it, tires squealing, and didn't stop until I hit a gas station a mile out, hands trembling as I dialed 911, then the parents. By the time anyone got back to the house, he was gone, vanished into the dark, leaving the wrecked door, and a trail of chaos behind. The aftermath was a blur. The parents rushed home, pale and shaken, thanking me profusely that night as the cops combed the place. But after that, silence. They never called me to babysit again, never returned my texts. Checking in. It was like they'd slammed a wall down between us. I couldn't shake the feeling they were hiding something, dodging questions I didn't even know to ask. Digging on my own turned-up scraps, the mom had an ex-husband, a guy with dark hair and a vague resemblance to the intruder, but it was a stretch, a guess with no proof. The police found nothing, no prints, no leads. Whoever he was, whatever he wanted, it stayed buried. Looking back, I'm convinced he was after the kid, maybe to hold a blade to my throat and force me out of the way, maybe worse. How he knew the parents were gone, why he targeted that house. That boy, it gnaws at me. The call to the mom earlier, the sedan scoping the place, was it all connected? Years later, the questions still circle unanswered. The parents' silence only deepens the mystery, like they're guarding a truth I'll never touch. All I know is I got out, and the kid did too. That's enough, except on quiet nights, when I wonder if he's still out there, waiting for another chance.